What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about some 007 First Light details. Actually, both of which that I want to talk about comes from Games Radar. They did a couple different articles, and were able to talk to some of the developers at IO Interactive. So we see the game yesterday. I was a big fan of that. I did a video kind of breaking it down, and some pretty cool stuff here I want to go over. So the first thing I want to talk about is just the size. You look at really how these Hitman games have done it, and you think about how Bond would do it. And again, this is maybe an assumption just kind of proven true later on. The game, we assume was going to be pretty big. You look at some of those maps, even Hitman 1 and 2, I think some of the biggest ones maybe even were in Hitman 2. They're capable of making gigantic maps. And I think, obviously a thing with Bond is a little bit more of that action, and you see it in the gameplay, right? More of the combat, more of the gunplay, more of the car chases. We'll talk about the car chases actually later. But, at its core, I think it's going to be a lot of, okay, how do I get into this area, or, how do I want to do it, right? And being able to use all of these different ways of solving something, that obviously they did so well with Hitman. So they say, I would say some of the missions in the game are the largest we've done in our history in terms of measurements. Then there was another interview where they were talking to a senior licensing producer, where they were talking about basically like a reskin of Hitman, like would it be that? And the answer that they say is no. They talk about how they've expanded the team, and this is where like the car chases actually come in. So they outright say, this is not just Hitman reskinned as Bond. I have said before, if you did just do that and you made it just like slightly more active, slightly more kind of, I guess, gameplay and like action-y heavy, that would really be all I needed, for I think this game to work for me. From what we saw yesterday, like I said yesterday even as well, it seems like it's that and then some. So they say we have a talented team back home, and our team has expanded ever since we first announced the game. Obviously, that meant there was even more interest. We were able to bring in amazing fresh talent to bolster what we were already had at the studio, and that has been a really big growth moment for us as a studio. These devs have given IO fresh eyes, fresh expertise, all of that. While still leaning into our strengths with a pedigree of 25 years behind us, it comes about the game first, the experience first. If you're looking at Hitman, it's the way that it is for a particular reason, because that's the gameplay experience we want to give. For Bond, it's not exactly that. It's not a reskin of that. And they talk about the driving, and they say it was absolutely a huge challenge, and also a challenge we didn't take on lightly. And this was actually the art director. We had to bring on the team's specific driving expertise, i.e. people that had experience coding, setting up, tweaking, and balancing. Because, of course, it's a balancing act of making a vehicle feel both exciting, credible, and dangerous at the same time, as being approachable and fun for a wide audience. So absolutely, that balance is very difficult, and indeed a new adventure for us, so something we took very seriously, and I'm pleased to say I feel we have landed in an amazing space. And that's interesting, because, driving, I think you watched the thing yesterday, and there was actually maybe even too much driving, right? In the beginning, there's this setup and really story and like why you're going to do that mission. Then you have that giant chase, right? And that's kind of almost a bridge from the more Hitman type stuff of, okay, we have to like infiltrate an area, right? That was kind of the beginning. Then you have the car chase, and then that was to bridge to, okay, now it's an Uncharted sequence, right? We're going to board a moving plane, we're going to get on it, we're going to throw people off it, etc. And so, I was a fan of the driving. I think, there were moments where it wasn't kind of a lot happening. It was more basically trying to keep up with the car, but it had some signature moments of driving through things and jumping off things. I just wonder, because again, they talk about the size. That doesn't really mean necessarily, I'd say, length. Like, will it be 2 times as long as Hitman 3? Not that I need that, by the way. I really don't. But I'm just trying to say, like, well, how much are we actually going to drive the car? I could see it being used, probably more than you might think, just because, again, I think the game obviously leaning more into that, action focus. So, again, the more we hear about it, and even this stuff, behind the scenes, to do car stuff, you bring in car people. I mean, that's maybe not mind-blowing, but it is, like, good to hear, right? It's not people, I guess, that have had no experience doing it. Again, the whole not reskin thing, I would have been fine if it was a reskin. At the same time, like, look, it's tough to even say that, though, or like, it's going to be interesting, I guess, like, how much they say that as this game goes, or as it gets closer. Because I even remember like yesterday when they showed all this stuff, and remember people got to see this game at Gamescom like a couple weeks back, right? And so they were saying, or I saw previews of it that talked about like it's hard to not see Hitman in Bond. And I don't actually think that's a negative, like actually at all. You're not, like, even when you reinvent yourself, which I think to a degree they're doing here, like this does look fresh. But at the same time, if I told you they made Hitman, you might already know that. You know what I mean? Like it gives off that flavor, but you can tell like they are definitely doing like a brand new thing. So I mean personally, I think this is a really nice middle ground of exactly what I just said, right? Where it's like it's fresh. If you didn't like Hitman, it's actually not a guarantee that you won't like this game, right? Because this game is trying to do some different stuff and put focus in different places. So it's not, it's not like if you like Hitman, you're guaranteed to like it. And it's not like if you hated Hitman, you're guaranteed to hate it. But at the same time, you probably can tell just from watching it for, say, 5-10 minutes, if you've seen Hitman, that it came from them. Does that make sense? And I think that's honestly a pretty good blend, because very rarely does a developer completely reinvent itself where you can't even believe that a studio that made one game then made another, right? Like it's almost unrecognizable. It doesn't happen actually all that much, especially for like AAA. But also, you don't want it to be the exact same thing. It's not Hitman 4 or it's not, another reboot of Hitman. This is Bond. So I'm liking everything we're hearing about it. As I said yesterday, I'm feeling really good about this game. I think this could easily be one of the best games of next year. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure as always you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.